So you remember how in my last video I covered the several war crimes committed by the Battle Cats, and there was some I wasn't 100% confident of charging them with a war crime, so I definitely have missed some. Thanks to my commenters, who have brought evidence to the courtroom, I can safely charge more of these heinous war criminals for their crimes. But first, I want to apologize to Ugando Jr., since when I was reading his description, I somehow completely forgot the entire meaning of the terrible twos, implying Ugando is still an infant, and as the cats kidnapped the egg, Ugando is more of a victim than anything, so he's free to go. This is what happens when you write your scripts at like 1 in the morning, you tend to miss some details. Now before we get to adding more sentences, I'm gonna say that this is gonna be the last video on the subject as I want to focus on other stuff, but if you do enjoy the video, go ahead and hit that like button if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. I'll make loads of Battle Cats content and even some Pokemon stuff, so if you enjoy that type of stuff, why not stick around? Anyways, back to the courtroom we go. As some commenters pointed out, stones do in fact have the capacity to splinter the skin like shrapnel, especially with the way Gravy slams his boulder, meaning that unfortunately, Gravy is going to receive the charge of fragmentary weaponry. Gravy wasn't one I was 100% certain of, but I have received enough evidence to charge Gravy with that sort of crime. This also means I can collectively charge all of the elemental pixies with war crimes. Manic Island can be charged with weather manipulation, as everywhere it goes, it emits volcanic ash in the air, and when you have enough of them in the same location, the air quality of an area can plummet to unlivable numbers. Subterra Sentinels, when attacking, causes the earth to split open, and they must have digged deep enough to cause lava to pour onto the surface. Digging that deep also has a very good chance of causing earthquakes, landing them a charge of indiscriminate attack. Another one I wasn't 100% confident in was Lumbercat and Weedwhacker Cat for giving them the charge of serrated weaponry. However, after some extra judgment, I have decided that giving them the charge of the use of serrated weaponry makes sense. Orbital Annihilator Ragnarok is guilty of the use of nuclear warfare, as the weapon they use is powered by both wormhole physics and thermonuclear technology according to their description. Using a nuclear weapon is also tied to indiscriminate attacks thanks to the extent that they can damage an area as well as radioactive fallout, but one usually has precedence over the other. To release someone of their crime, Extra Life Cat no longer has the charge of desecration of the dead, as pointed out by several commenters that it is their own grave. I even acknowledged this fact in my latest Battle Cats Facts video, however, the recording was done before that video came out, and since I moved computers, I forgot to make that correction, so Extra Life Cat is free to go. Bronze Cat, being a stone statue, attacks by breaking parts of its body, and this speed can possibly splinter someone, giving them the charge of fragmentary weapons. Mittersaw receives the charge of serrated weaponry, as it's in a similar boat as Lumbercat. Lowland is also guilty of chemical warfare, as she uses a serum to attack her enemies. I am also changing Nurse's poisoning charge to chemical warfare. After further inspection on Xmas Pudding Cat, the fish is indeed alive, therefore it could be relieved of its charge of desecration of the dead, as during his knockback animation, we can see that he moves his tail but nothing else, therefore we can confirm the fish is alive. Sashimi Cat, however, is still up for debate as Sashimi Cat is used as an offering several times, and his only limbs that are observed moving include the legs of the fish, and his description states, the cats try making the fish cat tastier. Earned stars in hospitality for its sacrifice, more money earned upon defeating an enemy. So I'm willing to bet the fish is dead, but that's up for you to decide on if Sashimi deserves the charge. When I went to read some of the unit's descriptions, one of those stood out to me, this being Obliterator Diabolosa, whose description states, a weapon of mass destruction built with Aku tech. No weapon on the planet can stop its advance. Deals massive damage to zombies, angels, and Aku. Since the weapon is considered a weapon of mass destruction, it is safe to assume that the weapon is nuclear in nature. However, there is one thing that we have to consider. What is Aku technology using? Since the goal of the Aku is to take over the world, it can be assumed that they would want to do it in the most efficient way possible. This being the use of nuclear weapons. Since the Diabolosa is using said Aku technology, we could charge them with the use of using a nuclear weapon. Fun fact, the name for Diabolosa comes from the Greek word diabolos, meaning slanderer, which over time became the English word for devil. Since those were all of the updated cases I had, I want to go over most of the things that were mentioned in the video and what agreements make them banned from war. There is one I'm going to avoid mentioning because I'm worried that Susan might send her goons after me though. I was originally going to include this sort of thing in the original video, but decided against it since most people would probably understand each of the things banned, but here I'll go over each of them here, so legal lesson time. Before we go into this, I want to state that I am no legal expert here, so don't take what I say as gospel. Sources for each of the crimes are in the description down below. Anyways, war crimes. The convention that regulates incendiary weapons is the third protocol of the prohibitions or restrictions on the use of incendiary weapons. What this article defines as an incendiary weapon includes flamethrowers, foul gases, shells, rockets, grenades, mines, bombs, and other containers of incendiary substances. Weapons such as a flamethrower are only allowed to be used to clear foliage or a pathway as a part of a military advance and cannot be used against individuals. Weather manipulation, as stated under the Convention on the Prohibition of Military or any other hostile use of environmental modification techniques, bans the use of weather modification used for the purpose to cause destruction of a target. Weather modification was actually used once in the Vietnam War under Operation Popeye, where the United States used cloud seeding to increase the rainfall by 30% in the Ho Chi Minh Trail from 1967 to 1968. Indiscriminate attacks were added in the 1977 Additional Protocol 1 to the Geneva Conventions. Indiscriminate attacks are defined as an attack against an area that isn't a military target, and is usually a civilian area. For example, the bombing raids that took place across cities like London, Rotterdam, Dresden, and Tokyo during the Second World War would all fall into this category. Electroshock weapons are a weapon that use electric shocks to incapacitate an individual. The most famous example of an electroshock weapon is the taser. In the 39th Committee Against Torture, weapons such as the Taser X26 constituted as a form of torture. Several UN organizations are dedicated to combating things such as torture. For this section on inhumane experimentation, all I'm going to state is that the Nuremberg Code was created as a list of ethical research principles for human experimentation that was created after the horrific atrocities committed by the German government between 1933 to 1945. The main gist is that the experiment must be done with consenting individuals for the good of society and must work to avoid as much suffering as possible on the test subjects. Also to add here, brainwashing is also considered a form of inhumane experimentation. Booby traps are defined as a device or setup that is intended to kill, harm, or surprise a human or another animal. Under the protocol on mines, booby traps, and other devices, booby traps that take the appearance of a harmless object are all banned from war, such as a corpse or a children's toy. Article 75, Section 2C prohibits hostage-taking in any shape or form in Protocol 1 of the Geneva Conventions. Serrated blades aren't explicitly banned by any convention or protocol. However, the wound caused by one can cause superfluous injury and unnecessary suffering towards the target. This can make a serrated blade, such as a serrated bayonet, fall under this category, but it isn't explicitly mentioned to be on the ban list. In a similar vein, fragmentary weapons are allowed if made with a material that can be seen easily with an X-ray. Weapons made with materials that can escape detection from X-rays are banned, such as glass, small rocks, and wood are banned under the Protocol on Non-Detectable Fragments. The Convention of the Development, Production, and Stockpiling of Biological and Toxin Weapons and on Their Destruction was the convention that banned biological warfare on all levels, such as using a toxin to attack, or using an animal, such as a rat, to deliver a deadly virus to the opposing side. Biological warfare is one of the 4 forms of warfare that constitute a weapon of mass destruction. The other 3 include chemical, radiological, and nuclear warfare. In the similarly law-named Convention on the Prohibition of the Development, Production, Stockpiling, and Use of Chemical Weapons and on Their Destruction, this convention is a ban on all chemical weapons, signed in 1992. However, there was an older protocol all the way back in 1925 that banned the use of chemical weapons in international conflicts, but this is the Chemical Weapons Convention that is the most up-to-date, to where it bans things such as tear gas for war. However, they are still allowed for riot control. Finally, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, which is the most recent treaty in this video, only being effective on January 22nd, 2021, and being the first legally binding agreement on nuclear weapons, prohibits the use of nuclear weapons with the end goal of eliminating every single nuclear weapon. Currently, there are 68 countries who are a party of the treaty and 26 countries who are signatories. If you're wondering about the map of countries who have signed it, here is the map. Green are the parties, and yellow are the signatories. So, there is the small update video about the subject, where I gave a proper update on some units I may have missed or needed to give new charges. We now have, adding up from the previous video, 24 cases of incendiary weaponry, 11 cases of weather manipulation, 9 cases of indiscriminate attack, 6 cases of fragmentary and serrated weaponry, 5 cases of hostage-taking, 4 cases of desecration of the dead and electroshock weaponry, 3 cases of child soldiers and chemical warfare, 2 2 cases of biological warfare, sexual violence, and nuclear warfare, and 1 case of inhumane experimentation, booby trapping, and brainwashing. This gives us a new sentence of 1,660 years. Like I said at the start of the video, this is going to be the last video on the subject, and I ended up doing a lot more digging to help clarify some stuff, or to add context to certain crimes. If you enjoyed this video, why not give it a like, and if you aren't subscribed to the channel yet, why not hit that big red button and leave a comment about something new you learned here, because that history section should have definitely taught you something. Anyways, I hope you have a wonderful day.